Do you collect anything else besides prototypes from G.I. Joe?
I dabble in Toy Biz Marvel prototypes, but again, very picky. My favorite Toy Biz Marvel figures as a kid were Tusk, who is this big, sort of hulking, looks like half buffalo guy with like tusks coming out of his shoulders, and a little guy would pop out of the back of him, a little tuskling. I have the 2-up for both of those, so the Toy Biz 2-up's about this big, and then the little tuskling 2-up is about that big. And then I have a couple others for Grovel and for Grizzly. And I actually have a line on some unproduced ones, some figures that weren't made. I have 2-ups for those, so there's that. And then for me, that's more because I grew up, reading X-Men comics, and I liked the Toy Biz toys for the most part. And so I know where there's like a couple hundred of them, and if I can't go down that rabbit hole. I would just they're literally this big. They're kind of pricey. And it would get out of hand really fast.
I could see how you could get out of hand with that.
And then I bought I bought 2 Mad Bubbler prototypes from Thundercats and 2 pieces of art from Jordan from Toy Hunters. And I've had to let those go because it was taking me down that same rabbit hole where I was like, okay, what else can I get? What else can I? And I loved them. It wasn't because they were rare, because they were prototypes. I mean, that the history is part of it. But it was because as a kid, I always, ever since I saw a picture of Mad Bubbler, and until that, up until this point, it's been like that mythical grail for unproduced stuff. I've always just wanted a Mad Bubbler. Even from the episode in the cartoon, I loved the Mad Bubbler. So it was more than just, it's this in-demand prototype, whatever. And I actually just sold it. I didn't make any money off it. I sold it at cost because it was making me want to go through other toy lines and be like, well, what else can I find that I'd really do? Like there's some Tiger Shark stuff that's really nice, some Battle Beast stuff that's really nice. And yeah, on one hand, it's pre-production, it's unreleased. There's always that appeal, but on the other hand, I was also, because I liked it, right, I couldn't do it. So I was like, the only way I can do this is if I cut the cord with the Mad Bubbler, because it was sending me down that path where this interview would have been a lot different. It would have been, from all different toy lines.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Is there any other stories that really stand out to you about prototypes and your journey through that? Is there anything that stands out?
Yeah, the difference between normal collecting and the sort of elevated prototype collecting is that most people who collect prototypes have had some interaction with the people who made the toys or who even made the prototype. And what's interesting about that is a lot of times they're not aware that people still care about the brands they worked on, or they're not aware that anyone cared about. I talk to Hasbro designers all the time who are like, really, people cared that I worked on something? For me, it was just a job, or I never thought anyone would care. So before my very first Joecon, which I wasn't even going to go to, because I was like, am I going to go to a convention? I wouldn't even know what to do. I don't know anybody. A friend of mine convinced me to go, so I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Joecon. At that same time, I had been talking to a former Hasbro sculptor named Bill Merkline, who's like family man, and I was like, hey, I'm going to be coming down to Rhode Island, and he's in Connecticut, which is only a couple hours away. Could we stop by your house? And he's like, yeah, sure. So I asked my friend, hey, do you want to go to a former Hasbro designer? So he was like, yes, sure. And this was my first Joecon, and it was the same year they were doing the Hasbro tour, so it was this great bookend of going to a former Hasbro designer's house, going to my first Joecon, going on the Hasbro tour. It was an amazing weekend. And so we go to Bill's house, and he brings out all these art copies that Hasbro would send him for reference and just spreads them out on his table. And it was mind-blowing to me. I'd never seen this stuff before. And it was sort of my gateway into vintage G.I. Joe pre-production. And he made a spaghetti, and we talked for like 12 hours about just about anything. And so I get to Joecon with all these images, because I didn't take all the artwork. He still has a lot of it, but some of the images we had, and we're showing them around to like the declassified guys and other prototype collectors. This is how I kind of got to know them on a different level, because at the time they just knew me from the internet. They didn't know me from anyone. And that experience, that sharing that with them and sharing that information with them, and then coming home and sharing it with the hobby is really what solidified a lot of my friendships and relationships in this hobby, which I wouldn't trade for anything. These are like my best friends now. And all that came just from this sort of search for knowledge for G.I. Joe history, and it led to so many interactions with other people that really just changed my life. Like, I never thought that collecting toys would ever change my life, but when you meet the people who are who made the toys and the people who collect the toys on sort of a different level, other than like, oh, you like this, I like this. When it gets a little deeper, a little more personal, like I said, Bill's like family to me now. Like, he's one of my favorite people on the planet, and it's someone that I never would have met if I hadn't asked myself the question, where did all this come from? So,
all right, well, thanks.